Yeah, well, good afternoon, I can say, right at noon. It's now afternoon, not saying good morning. But it's good to be here, good to kick off a new month and trying to talk about something that is kind of close to the work I do. The other times I'm not here, just dealing with depression and trying to help people be stronger, cope with it better, really live their lives because I'll read some stats here in a few minutes that just show how prevalent depression is. So this month, wanting to empower people, wanting to strengthen them with ideas, wanting to really understand it as good as possible. So this month, or this, excuse me, this week, we'll kind of do an overview. Next week, we're going to talk more about specific coping and how do you fight with depression, that kind of thing. But some reminders of the email I sent out on Monday. First, recognizing that because we are all human, we're all potentially at risk for depression. And it doesn't mean that there is some kind of precipitating factor, but I would just say because life sometimes hits people, knocks them down, another event comes, and once you face 3 or 4 setbacks in a short amount of time, I'd say that's when I get nervous about how people will respond. Sometimes people can handle one, and then they get 2 and 3, and suddenly they can't realize, like, how did I get here? And that's the scenario. So just wanting to level the playing field of sorts and saying, let's pay attention to this because each of us have a chance at some point in our life to really struggle with that. Second, if you've ever had someone depressed in your family, you've worked with somebody who's depressed, it's a reminder that as a kind of a helper, you have to have grace, mercy, and patience for those who have depression. Because what they're lacking is just the ability, the energy to break through all of that like cement that cakes around them and makes it really difficult to move, to think, to act. So it becomes frustrating. Like, why are you still laying there? Why can't you just get up and go? And I will cite it to those days we have where maybe you're working on a project, you're not physically active, but you've done something mentally all day. You get to the end of the day, how tired are you? You're like ready to be done. And physically you didn't do a thing. But it's a bridge, it's an experience that says mental health, like depression, can suck all the energy out even without physical energy. So people are fighting so hard in the midst of one of those depressive moods that they can't have any energy to do anything else. So we have to offer them some grace. And also saying at the start of this month that I believe that depression can be managed, mitigated, even overcome. I don't want it to be discouraging that I guess this is a lifelong thing, I'm always going to have it. That is not the case whatsoever. Pay attention to the homework I was asking people to do. Number one, just address the sadness that if you have it. It doesn't mean, I mean, there's a difference between sadness and grief, disappointment, discouragement. They're all kind of distinct, but if you tolerate sadness and don't talk about it, I think it just kind of finds a place to live in your life. And then if it accumulates, then you start to kind of get burdened by it and it puts you on a pathway maybe that you don't want to be on. So if you're sad about anything, find someone to talk to. And also just double checking your own routines. That other homework assignment was, physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually, have some healthy routines that are consistent, that are fulfilling, because depression seems to suck everybody in and shrink the world and make things really intense. And when we have broader perspectives and consistent behaviors, it's going to be easier to resist. So here's some of those facts I was hinting at earlier, just about how prevalent it all is. Number one, 8% of Americans are affected by depression. So that's 21 million people, but that's like 1 in 10, right? So chances are in the course of your day, wherever you are, whatever you do, there is somebody in that room with you that has struggled with it or presently struggling with it. For those with families or in the work I do as a counselor, 15% of teenagers are affected as well. That's 3.7 million teenagers are dealing with depression. So that's just depression alone. That's not other aspects of the stress of what it's like to be a teenager right now. Some other facts as we look at other ages of life. Generally, only about 35% of people suffering from severe depression actually seek help from a mental health professional. So a third of people just kind of suffer alone. Maybe they don't have the support or they don't have the energy to bridge that gap or they don't know where to go or how to get there. But that's a really sad number to think how many people might be struggling by themselves. And then the article I found also was highlighting some of these ages of 65 and above. 27% of those adults, while assessed by their doctors in the actual doctor's office, meet the criteria of major depression. So about 25%. And that can be related to ongoing health issues, right? Or isolation as families aren't as close, friendships have shifted, a lot of things can go into play. But here's the other stat that's on top of it. In addition, 31% of those adults over 65 have symptoms of depression that fall short of the full criteria, but are still affecting them in a significant way. So most diagnoses in my field have about 7 criteria that have to be met to qualify as a specific diagnosis. So the first stat is saying 27% of those adults 65 and over match all 7, so they qualify. But this other 31% might have half of that. But that means another 31% of people are struggling with maybe isolation, hopelessness, helplessness, low energy, just kind of a mix of some of those things. But if you add those two things together, it's like, man, that's over 50% of people above 65 probably are struggling with some version of depression. So it gives us a perspective about why to be proactive with it, or just to pay attention to those around us in case they need some additional support. But some questions here for us today. One specific one, because I think this is important to understand. How do you guys describe the difference between disappointment and discouragement? As I've said, there's lots of different levels of this, but those are the first two. What's the difference to you between disappointment and discouragement? I'll answer my own question too, no worries, but just for yourself, any distinction?
I feel like discouragement might like you don't see a way out or disappointment.
Yeah, yeah, I think that part about getting over it. The answer to that question that I will often say is like a description of someone walking on a path, right? So if they're walking along, they trip and fall and get right back up, along those lines, Shelley, is disappointment. Because I hit something, it took me out, but I was able to get up, dust myself off, and continue to move forward. And I would say discouragement is like tripping and falling 2 or 3 times in a row. But yet the person can still get up, keep moving forward. Um, so it's like disappointment is up here. If a normal mood is way up here, disappointment's 1 notch below. Discouragement's a notch below that. And then we have depression a notch below that. And I would say that's where people trip and fall. And instead of getting up right away, they kind of lay there and think, what in the world am I doing? Do I even want to get up right now? And maybe with a little help and encouragement, they can, but maybe they get to one knee first and catch their breath. It's just slower. And then the bottom realm, the most severe form of kind of these moods, I would say, is despair. And the analogy on that one would apply that someone just trips and falls and says, I am done. I don't want to walk anymore. I don't want to continue. This is working against me. So it's a simple little description, whether the levels or this idea of a walk, just those key differences. And that's why I say everyone's susceptible to it, because we've all been through something that was disappointing. We've all been through something or a period of time that was discouraging to us. Maybe we had some sadness that lingered for a while and it turned into some depression. Maybe we've been through some grief that we thought we were through and it wasn't, it lingered, turned into some sadness and some other things. It's just a pretty important thing to pay attention to, and that's why we're talking about it. So another question is, when someone you knew was very sad or even depressed, what did you do to help that person? Imagine that's been an opportunity, even in this group today. Think back. If someone was sad about something or depressed, what did you do that was helpful?
Let them know that I was there. Talk about something.
Yeah,
Then
right? It's kind of a non-pressure kind of contact. Yeah, yeah, just, hey, I'm here if you need me, right? A conversation, a text, a message. Those are good. Yeah, kind of gives space. Any others? An example from earlier today was, um, and trying to generate some ideas, was about being patient with someone, just sitting with them. So not just communicating with them in a gracious way, but just sitting with them, offering to do things for them. Tasks go a long way. Certainly, we talk about functioning in depression, it's lower. Hey, can I get you something to eat? Can I bring it over? Can I do something for you? These are all ideas to keep in mind. And more so next week, we'll talk about ways to generate some of those ideas of coping, or just to be empowered about what can you do to help somebody who is depressed. So some final words here about this overview of understanding depression. Number one, depression robs people of the energy they need for life, and that's why those daily activities is absent, because they are trying to function as best they can, but there is like a hole in the bottom of the boat, and all their energy is just dissipating faster than they can fill it, and then it's just enough to be able to fight the thoughts inside. That's why they can't maybe do the daily activities that they want to do, or go to work as much as they want, or take care of family interactions as much. It's this idea, the benefit, I'd say, they are trying to fight. They're just not fighting effective enough because they need more help. So that's the first thing to say. Second is remembering that depression turns up the volume of negative thinking and emotions to concerning levels. Depression is like this master distorter of thoughts, beliefs, interactions with others, and it usually is quite negative. So if something small, it seems bigger. If something is disappointing, it seems harsher. If something didn't work out quite that way, instead of it being a singular event, a thought says, man, I never can do this. So everything gets turned up in fierceness, and that's part of why depression is so difficult. And then finally, depression is best fought with both personal activities, making efforts in those ways to improve that routine and your wellness, but also environmental changes. So one of those pieces of feedback was, if someone's sad and discouraged, it's like offer them to come on a ride with you somewhere. Like, hey, I got a day off, I got to run some errands, but I want someone in the car with me. Could you join? You don't have to say anything, you don't have to go in with me, but I just want someone near me, because what you're doing is a subtle kind of passive way just to get them in a different spot. Chances are it shifts some of their focus. It breaks the suction of just being isolated and being around their house or in their room or in their bed or whatever. And it starts to plant some seeds for changing a routine, right? Are you doing everything you can physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually just to be in a better spot than the pressure of depression that says, forget about it. It's helpless. You can't change. And you're not going to win this battle. So it is obviously a significant topic, and a perhaps less fun facts to talk about as I kick off these talks. But in February, when it is still 4 degrees outside today and 12 inches of snow coming this weekend, it's like maybe someone's going to get knocked down again, and they're going to think, I don't want to get up because I have 6 more weeks of winter, and they're done already. So that's why we're talking about it right now. And hopefully be empowered for yourselves or those you care about, and be proactive against anything that might creep up. So good to see all of you. Nice to be back and talking, kicking off a new month, and we'll see where the rest of the month goes. So have a good workout today. All right.